All right, in this video, we're continuing where we left off. All right, so we're looking at our two view controllers, and we need them to communicate. Before we do that, we have to make for sure that we have access to everything on both the controllers. To make for sure that we actually have access to what's on this page, we must make for sure that this view controller is connected to a class. So let's click on the second page view controller, or the little view controller yellow button there. Open up the properties. We have to go to, just making for sure, this thing is called the Identity Inspector. So we go to the Identity Inspector and we make for sure that this controller is connected to a class, which it is. It is connected to the second page view control. So it is. Let's start with the second page view control, and it appears that I have deleted some code since the previous video. So let's start from scratch. I have a button. It is the OK button. I need an action. OK, click. UI button. And when we click it, we want to dismiss. And animation true. Completion. Nothing. And we have to do the same for the cancel, control, drag. It's an action. This is a cancel click. Send an EY button. And we're going to do the same thing for the cancel. So right now, all we've got is that if we click OK or cancel, we go back to the main window. We also need access to the input box. So I don't want an action, I want an outlet. I'm going to call this something very boring, such as text box. And now I have access to the text box. If we go to the first page, you'll notice if I click on the first page, I'm now back in the view controller. Now it gets interesting. How are we going to, if somebody enters something in this text box, have this text box modify? We could give access from our second page view controller to modify our GUI on the first page. We could, but that is very bad practice because each view controller should only be presented with data, and then the controller itself decides how we're displaying that data. So let's first make our outlet. And I'm going to be very boring here, variable text label, connect it. This should be private. Nobody should have access to get anything on this outlet or on this GUI. We can exchange data, but we should not exchange GUI. We should not give access to each other's GUI. It's kind of private. This is why it's called controller. Remember, the controller is the interface between the data and the GUI. So we should not be giving anybody else access to the GUI elements. So how are we going to have data passed back and forth? Well, the simplest thing to do is just to create a variable that's going to be a string. So variable text, and I'm going to start it by being an empty string. And every time this is modified, and this is where did set shines, I'm just going to change the variable text dot, not variable text, sorry, our variable text label is going to be equal to this guy. So you can see here, again, I'm letting the data be modifiable, but I'm not giving anybody access to our GUI. This is very, very important. If you do this in your assignment, I shall be very upset with you. So now we have data, and if we leave this public, then theoretically, our second page view controller can modify it. But we still have to let our second page view controller have access to the first page. So let's look at both the view controllers side by side. Manual, Segway example. So now I have the view controllers side by side. And this guy wants to have access to this guy because it wants to be able to change the variable text. So let's make a variable here. Variable, and let's call this main page. And what type is it going to be? Well, it's going to be a view controller because that's the class, so that is the type it's going to be. Now, we don't necessarily know whether or not we're getting a view controller, so let us make it an optional. So here's what we do when we get the second page. When we click OK, if our main page is not null, then what we're going to do is we're just going to modify the variable.text. So our main page, our variable text for the main page is going to be equal to, and where is our text box? It's a text box here, so text box.text. Now it's complaining because text box.text is it may be optional, there may be nothing in there. So let's just do let new text equal text box dot text and put an if new text Okay, so let's have a quick review. If we click the OK button, we set the new text equal to whatever is in the text. And if there's something in the text box, then we modify our variable text. Everything looks good here. This could be an exclamation point because we're already checking to see if it's not equal to nil. However, what if this is nil, then we're not modifying anything. I don't know if you recall, but we can have let new text equal this, and if it's equal to null, we'll set it to an empty string. So if you remember this syntax, it basically is equivalent to if textbox.text is not null, set it. Otherwise, if it is null, use this default value. So this is what we're doing here, but at the moment, we still don't have access to the main page. How do we get access to this main page? All right, let's look at the stuff that I've been ignoring for a while. We have a function, override func, prepare for segue. Well, the second page view controller is not doing a segue, but the first page is. So let's put this in the first page. And when does this get called? This gets called just before we do our segue. So it's an event, happens just prior to the segue actually happening. And very simply, we can say that how do we get access to the second page view controller? How do we do that? Well, look at this. Prepare for segue. So let's see what segue has. Segue has a destination. So we can say destination. So let the second page equal the destination. And let's go second page dot main page equals self. And now we've got a complaint. So why do we have a complaint? Let's have a quick look. Value type of UI view controller has no member main page. Well, our second page view controller is a UI view controller, but we need access to this, and we know that it's this, so we have to typecast. We do that in Swift by going as second page view controller, and that should fix our problem, except it won't. Now what are they complaining about? UI view controller is not convertible to a second page view controller. When you think about it, it makes sense because we're not sure that second page view controller has everything it needs. So did we mean to use as exclamation point? Yeah, why not? Let's just fix it. And now all our errors are gone. Let's see if this works. All right, let's go to page 2. Let's type something. Hello world. And it worked. Go to page 2. Goodbye, cruel world. And it worked. And before I finish up this video, let's just put in a couple of breakpoints so that we can see what's happening when it's happening. So I go to second page, and it goes to the prepare for segue. If you will notice here that we haven't actually gone to the second page, so this code is happening before we've gone to the second page. Let's carry on. We're now on the second page, did load. So now we're loading the second page. Carrying on. Type hello. Click OK. Now we're just about ready to dismiss. Oh, we're not ready to dismiss yet. We've changed hello, and since we've changed the variable text, it has jumped into the view controllers, the variable text, and it is now setting the label. So we haven't even gotten to the dismiss yet. We're somewhere in there. Keep going. Now we're ready to dismiss, and we're back on this page. And I'm curious to know, if I go back to page 2, does it do another load again? Let's find out. We're on the prepare for segue, and we are reloading our page. So you can see when we dismiss the page, we're actually dismissing it. It's just not staying around as a layer behind something else. We're actually dismissing it. I'm going to add a new breakpoint just right here so we can see what's going on. Text. Okay, so here I am about to set new text. Jump over, and right now I'm going to change on the main page, I'm going to change variable text. And when I do so, it goes directly into did set, sets that, and then comes back here, and then we do the dismiss. So everything is functioning as we want it to. Before we finish up, I would like to make for sure that the code we wrote was robust. So let us go back. I'm just going to stop that. All right, let's look at our prepare for segue. We are assuming that the destination for our segue is the second page view controller. We shouldn't really make that assumption so quickly So we should be looking at which segue is being triggered, because although in our case there is only one, there might be more than one being triggered. So let's look at what we can do. First, in our main storyboard, we can assign our segue a name. So click the segue, go to the Properties window, and give it an identifier. And I'm going to be, again, very boring, second page segue. So now this segue actually has a name. And if we go back to our control, I can be a little more careful and basically say if the segue dot identifier equals, and I think I called it second page segue, then we do this and we are more careful. All right, one last run through. Go to page 2. Hello. And everything still works as planned. And that's it for segues and multiple screens.